Hey everybody, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Kieran. I like to help people using a spiritual perspective. At least I like to think that I do. Today I wanted to talk about spiritual awakening and what the stages are. And at the end I wanted to kind of go over what it means, why you're going through it, what's being asked of you, what the whole purpose is, what the benefits, outcome type of thing is going to be in your life, right? So hopefully this information resonates with anybody that's going through it at the moment, or anybody that's just wondering, curious, maybe you've already been through many of the stages and you're just, confirming or just going over your own information just to know where you are type of thing, right? So this information is going to be what I've experienced personally in my life, not necessarily it's not necessarily going to be the same words and stuff as you might find if you were to type it into Google or Yahoo. I mean, God knows why you'd be using Yahoo as a search engine, but you get the point. These are just going to be a different interpretation, but it's going to be the same experience. So hopefully you guys will resonate with it. Okay, so I'm just going to get right into it and talk about the first stage of a spiritual awakening and the way that I've experienced it. Okay, so for me, it was a new awareness. In this stage, you basically get some sort of information, some sort of download, an idea that supersedes everything that you've previously known about yourself and the world, right? So it can happen very, very naturally and in a subtle way. I often find that it does, generally speaking, happen in a subtle way at the beginning, just to ease you into a spiritual awakening. Even later on in my own journey, there's been times where I've had huge catalysts change me in profound ways. But before any of that stuff really happened, there had to be some sort of point to which that catalyst could enter into my life. You know what I mean? So for me, the first time that this really manifested itself was I was sitting in my car at the time, and this was about probably 4 or 5 months after a terrible narcissistic breakup with a partner that was a narcissist, and that relationship really destroyed who I was. I came out of that relationship a very different person, and it felt like my soul had been really kind of sucked out of me. Like I had no joy left. I was just very depressed and sad, and on a very deep, deep spiritual level. It honestly felt like kind of like the raping of my soul, to be over dramatic, right? But that is kind of what it feels like. It feels very destructive. And I was sitting in my car, just going over articles on my phone, and I was reading about narcissism, and I probably was reading about it for a couple of weeks now, and it was making sense. All of it was really helping me, but there's something missing. Just knowing that it was, that this was what they were, who they were, what they were doing, what their personality was like. It wasn't enough. Do you know what I mean? And so I came across this website by this woman named Melanie Evans, and she runs her own website blog, and it was talking about spirituality, spiritual perspective of of the um, of the work of narcissism itself. And she was using terms like soulmate, twin flames, chakra, quantum healing, a lot of spiritual terms and stuff that I was resonating with, whereas previously in my life I had rejected almost completely. And so this really, really spoke to me on a deep level, because it was like I was finally understanding who I was. And I was understanding these things like soul contracts, and that my soul had signed a contract with a narcissist to teach me a lesson in loving myself, and to to really to really help me on my spiritual journey. That was kind of the first catalyst for my own spiritual awakening. If it wasn't for her, I never would have been spiritually awakened, right? So in this way, that event itself really was a catalyst, right? But the spiritual part of it, how I got that information, was very subtle. I was just sitting in my car reading over articles, and after that night I got that new awareness. And that new awareness, it gives you a lot of ideas, a lot of excitement, a lot of plans, and a lot of new ways of thinking, right, about yourself and about the world. However, because it's only the beginning of the stage of your spiritual awakening and the beginning of this new journey, you still get to have your old life. You still get to be who you were, who you're not, and you still get to be, all those things, and you still have all of this built up bullshit that hasn't really been exposed yet to the surface of your conscious mind. And so it's kind of fun. Not only do you get to have this new awareness, this new truth, but it also excites you, and so you get to go and do all these new things with this new perspective. So it's kind of like a spiritual high. And this leads me into stage two, which spiritual high and slash spiritual ego. So during this stage, you really kind of get out of hand. It's kind of like being at the beach, and you discover this new beach, which is this new awareness. And the second stage of spiritual ego, you're kind of in the waters a little bit, just the shallow part, having fun. You haven't really gone too deep, but but you're also, you're kind of just seeing it out, experiencing some things. And but the beach is right there, and everything that you've known is still very, very close. So you're not really too far yet. And so you're able to do a lot of the things that you're able to do. So during this stage of having a spiritual ego, it really gets to the point in your mind where you start to identify with things in a very specific way. You start taking terms very seriously in order to identify yourself. But it's a very natural part of the process, because during this stage is where you're learning all the information. So there's no other way to really go about it. And so at the time, when I was reading about spiritual ego, I was like, I'm never going to have a spiritual ego. I'm much too aware for that. But, looking back, I totally had a spiritual ego. I had already didn't like religion. So having this new fundamental truth about religion, or not about religion, but about life, which it made me even more condescending towards religion. And it definitely kind of clouds your judgment with the way that you deal with people. You start to think that they're kind of inferior for not knowing something that you know. And and that really does take hold of you sometimes. Some other people, more for others. I was kind of a little bit more balanced with it, and it didn't last too long for me, probably about like a month or two. But during the stage, you're very much into your old life still. I was still hanging around with people I didn't like, still messing with girls I shouldn't have been messing with, still doing drugs. I was still doing cocaine even after, having an awareness of things. It didn't last very long. Probably about a month or so after the awareness, I quit for like the rest of my life, assuming, unless I do it 6 years or something. I have no idea. But, that was the last time I did it up to this point, right? So it's a very exciting stage, because you're still very much filled with this new sense of joy. Like for me, I thought everything was going to work out just fine, because I was, watching spiritual videos, watching, things with information, learning about myself, looking up things, star seeds, the soulmates, just learning a bunch of information. And so, when this happened, I quit my job that I hated. I just fucked off basically and did my own thing, thinking that everything would work itself out in the end. And in a way it does, but the timeline is not what you think. And this really hit me hard. And I think it hits a lot of people hard, because everybody goes through this type of stage where they're kind of high on themselves, thinking that they know everything, because you haven't really done any real work. The things that you've built up in your life have not dissolved or destroyed themselves yet. All that's been added is a kind of new awareness. And in this awareness, you go into a stage where you have this ego, where you're just really high and excited about everything. But ultimately, this leads into the third stage, which is dark night of the soul, disillusionment. Now, during this stage, all of the hope, all of the things that you've had, that you were really holding on to, all of the labels, they don't really matter anymore, because you start to realize that you're so deep now that you can't go back. Like you're now like past the shallow water. You're now treading water. Do you know what I mean? Like you're now in it. And every time you try and swim back, it doesn't work. You either stop yourself, or some other kind of force stops yourself, just for the sake of metaphor that I'm painting a picture here for you. If you're trying to swim back to shore, a boat might get in the way, and you can't go back there, or there's an undertow and it just spits you back out, back towards the deeper end, because you're in it now. You can't go. And this is the stage where usually there is a large catalyst, that there's usually something that profoundly changes your life. For me, it was the entrance of a twin flame into my life. That, her entering into my life changed my life forever in an incredibly potent way. And it brought up pretty much everything that I've ever buried deep down inside of myself. Any fears, fears I didn't even know I had, made their way to the surface. Ideas about myself, ideas about others, ideas about love, ideas about, people, just everything. The truth was suddenly becoming very, very, I don't know what was shadowy. Is disillusionment. Dark night of the soul, you basically get this incredibly deep depression, as nothing outside of you can fulfill you anymore. And the whole point of this stage really is to is to show you to rely on yourself, is to go inside of yourself for all of that power. Because, again, none of that stuff is working anymore. The ego that you've had, oh man, it took me about probably, I learned so hard that all of that shit was not going to serve me. I mean, I was like, I went on my little journey, and almost 2 months in, it was like, holy shit, this is not good. I've really messed up my life. And you try to go back. You try to go back and do the things that aren't working for you anymore. I was working at Pizza Hut, just a shit job that was the worst thing ever. Totally terrible, but it was safe, it was stable, and the money, the tips and everything was good. And I could do drugs and hang around with people I didn't really like, but I knew that they would like me if I just acted like they did. Just doing stupid stuff, unconscious stuff, things you don't even really think about. And I would try to go back to that, type of job, try to go back to that type of environment many times. But every time it's the same, and it always fails. And it always fails because you're not meant, I wasn't meant to be doing it. You're not meant to be doing it. There's a deeper understanding of yourself that needs to take place before you actually do have all of these new desires and new life. And during the dark night of the soul, it's the toughest one to get through, the longest process. For me, I'm definitely on a latter stage. I'm probably on the next stage, I would think, myself. But because I remember, being in this energy, especially around winter months and stuff, being very heavy, very very, very dark. And you can go through multiple ones. If you haven't learned lessons, sometimes you alternate between stages, just to get the last little bits out. Sometimes you need to be shaken up, and then there'll be a period of rest, and then you get shaken up again. And each time something shakes within you, it leads to a kind of another little dark night of the soul, until you kind of learn what it is that you need to learn in that specific sense, in that specific time. And during this time of dark night, you're pretty much losing a lot of the faith that you once had. It kind of evaporates, and you don't know what to rely on anymore, who to rely on. The things, I was, as strange, as silly as it might sound, I was used to be connecting with spirit guides and angels, and my higher self, and really, really connecting. And then just 2 or 3 months, possibly even 4, where I was just not nobody. It was like they had all disappeared. And in a sense, they had. One, because it was a relationship with myself, right? And if I was losing that, then I was losing them. And two is that they're not going to always be able to be there, because the entire point of the whole journey itself, that I'll get into later, is really about you, and it's about finding your own truth and your own power, right? So again, like that's going to be a lot of the time you're going to have to just do things on your own with no outside help. Like it's just about going inside of yourself sometimes, and just kind of like falling into yourself, and just letting everything go, and just accepting that you're on this journey, and it is what it is, type of thing. And the more I did that, the more I was just like, this is stupid, I can't do it anymore. The more it actually got easier. The less I was depressed, the more that I started to see things in a better light, the more that I would, the small blessings that I used to take for granted, I would actually appreciate more. Things would actually kind of like, I'd be like, okay, that's cool, thank you for that. And just small things, anything. Sometimes it would just be the fact that I would get 8 green lights in a row, and I'd be like, that's great, thank you for 8 green lights, because I don't want to be stuck in traffic and sitting at every red light. Just little things. It really makes you, it humbles the hell out of you. It really does. And that's kind of I think the ultimate purpose of the dark night of the soul, and in a huge way, is to really humble you, to because when you are humbled, you're the things that you really want do come to you in a better way, because you're letting go of how you think things should happen, and what it is exactly that you think you want. Do you know what I mean? So in this way, in this stage, a lot of your beliefs are challenged about yourself and about others. But the good news is, despite how long it might last or how painful it is, it does end. Just everything is in cycles. The stage will end, and you will go into another stage, which I've written down here, called New Foundations, the Old Breaks Away. So basically, this is just the new kind of foundations that you're now building upon yourself. And this is basically where I'm at. I'm kind of at the latter stage of this myself, and I've been on this particular stage, I want to say for 2 or 3 months, is you rebuild your life. You realize the things that need to change. all the habits that you struggle with that might have really come out during the dark night of the soul, all the fears, everything. You really start to look at them and to let go of them, to solve them, to make peace with them, and you start building your life in the way that you want, and you do it with a more patient attitude and one that's kind of more graceful, because you're allowing things to come in a natural way. You're deciding that you don't have all the answers all the time, that there is a deeper truth about you, that you can that there's a horizon to which you are set, which your ship is heading towards. Because after you make it out of that storm, the dark night, you inevitably you do end up in calmer waters, and you're still heading in the direction that you want to head in. It's just a particular part of your journey of the spiritual awakening, right? And you get to the stage and you're like, okay, I made it out of that. Now I'm heading towards something good, but now I know that in order to get to that place, I'm gonna have to do things a little bit differently. So for the metaphor, back to the original one I was using, talking about the water, if the dark night of the soul was you being stuck in the water, not being able to go back, treading your own water, can't go to the shore, just being tossed and turned around. This is kind of like, this stage is about like almost a way kind of like being rescued, kind of realizing that in order to get to your destination, you have to swim. You do have to swim. You can't just sit. You can't just do nothing. You have to try. You have to meet the universe halfway. You have to just let go and go with the current of the flow, right? Let the waters carry you, type of thing. And again, if you were looking at this from the point of view of being on a ship or something like that, and being on a ship, during the dark night is a storm and you make it out, you realize that after you make it out of that storm, you have to do a lot of repairs. You have to heal. You have to prepare yourself for reaching that land, right? You maybe repair the masts, scrub the decks, whatever it is. I don't know. I've never been on a ship. The point is that you heal yourself. A lot of the stuff that's been shaken up is now going away. The old is going away, and the old goes away for the new to come in. And the new is much better. Even though we resist it for such a long time, it is ultimately better than the old, because the old, you're attached to, but it's not fun anymore. It's not making you happy. And we often don't think that the new could make us happy like the old did. But, inevitably it must be true that it would, because the old did make us happy at some point. And the only reason that we're really not able to let go of the old is because, we have this really deep attachment towards it. And during this stage, when the light, you can see the light again and you're building these new foundations, you're taking better care of yourself. You're learning really who you are. You're applying the lessons that you've learned in real time, in real life, and you're taking things basically as much as you can, kind of one day at a time, because it's really all you can handle. Because, especially for me, going through this stage, going through this part of life is, I've always been impatient. So this is teaching me a lot of patience. This is a very slower moving journey, but one that's better than just making rash decisions, because it's leading towards something. It's leading towards something profound and powerful. That's for myself and also for others, right? So this eventually leads into the fifth stage, which is, you can consider the final stage if you want. But this I put new perception / personal wholeness, personal oneness, right? So this is going to be basically, you get to a point where you've gone on your journey, you've learned all of your lessons, and there comes a point where you go full circle and you become one kind of with yourself in a way. It doesn't mean that all the pain in life goes away, or that there aren't going to be times that suck. That's not what an awakening is. It's not about being in bliss all of the time. I mean, I'm no ascended master. I doubt that I ever will be. I'm not Eckhart Tolle. I'm not, the Dalai Lama, any people like that. And most of us aren't, for good reason. But you do end up with a new perception of life, with a way of looking at things, because ultimately you're going to discover a deep truth with your heart that, you're not a human having a spiritual experience. You're a spiritual being having a human experience. And so you're not human who's just aware of spirituality. You are, the whole point of an awakening is not that. That's kind of the early stages. At the end of it, you're like, oh shit, no, I'm actually a spiritual being having a human experience. And that in itself is incredibly profound, because it means that you have to you actually have to, you see things in a different way. You look at your body differently. I'm really starting to try and take care of my body a lot in the last couple of weeks. I've been really like putting away old habits, stopping eating cookies and shit. Sometimes I fail because cookies are delicious, but the point is that I'm really, really trying, right? And just because it really is like, it's a vessel, it's yours, and everything, you start to see things as blockages that's blocking the flow to your life. Maybe it's, things that were, let's just say when I first was on my journey, let's just give a quick example. I was very messy. Things were always a mess, but I never actually kind of liked it that way. It was always stressful, but I just learned that from my parents, who were very messy. But now I keep, I try to keep everything very, very clean. The spaces that I keep are very, very different, and if I ever see anything that's very dirty, I just get rid of it because I see it as a blockage to my own life. You know what I mean? So I want things to be in the flow. You can consider that kind of like feng shui in a sense, right? Moving furniture around to make the flow kind of flow. Said flow too many times there, but you get the point. So it's you become more natural in a way to yourself, and it's just about, at the end of it, it's just kind of about loving yourself, or realizing that you're worth love, realizing that there's something about you that's awesome and that you can go with it. So, again, like, I'm not a new perception, personal wholeness, that's not going to solve every single factor of your life, but it is going to make you content with who you are as a being. And that will enable you to kind of always be able to rely on yourself in the future, so that no matter what happens, you'll be able to fall into your own grace and know that it'll be taken care of. And when you do that, things just flow way naturally. And the rest of your spiritual awakening is a more fluid experience. Because during this, these 5 initial stages of spiritual awakening to get to this point, it's chaos, it's confusion, it's ups and downs, it's, destroying the self, building up the new, finding what works, what doesn't, you got to get rid of. It's a process of trial and error, and it can take as long as it takes. Each person is different. Because each individual is different. Your own experience is different. I don't have, the experiences in life that others have that are going through a spiritual awakening. I've known people that have gone through spiritual awakenings that might have kids or married and they're trying to break up their relationships or whatever it is, right? I'm not that. I'm just, that's not my experience, right? My catalyst, or my initial event for this, was 2 things: was the breakup with a narcissist and meeting a twin flame. And everything else has kind of just been, me guiding myself through that, through all of these events and stuff like that. And everybody has their own karma and stuff that they're dealing with, right? So those are the 5 stages. I'm just going to go over them again real quick, just in case, because I don't know how to do video editing right now at the moment. So all of my videos are kind of just a little bit all over the place, but hopefully as I get some more money and learn more, I'll be able to take care of that aspect of the videos and stuff. But again, so first stage, new awareness. Second, your spiritual ego. The third stage, dark night of the soul, disillusionment. 4th stage is, new foundations, old breaks away. And the 5th stage is new perceptions, personal wholeness. Okay? So now for the next, hopefully, 5 or 6 minutes, if I can keep it in that time frame, I'm going to talk about why you're going through that, what the point is, what's being asked of you, and, why the hell would you even bother doing it on a soul level? Why would you come to experience it? So I'm going to describe it in the best way that I can. There's definitely a lot of ways of describing it. I have my laptop open right now, not to anything specific. Just if I really wanted to, I could find a really quick definition for you and give it to you. But I'd rather just kind of explain it in my own words, to the best of my ability. Okay? So to me, when I look at a spiritual awakening and I look at why you're going through it, why I'm going through it, it's because the world is changing. The world is getting to a place where the way that everything has been cannot be. Because if you look at the world, and you might notice a lot of good things, because there are a lot of good things, but you might notice a lot of chaos. You might notice a lot of things that seem to be rearing their head up. Fears, insecurities, racism, prejudice, bigotry, hate, all of these things, Jesus, I almost had a lisp there for a second. All of these things, they've been brought up to the surface in this world. And it doesn't take long to look at this world and see that it's in desperate need of healing. That as a collective, as a species, as an entire race, as an energy, you can see that the world is not healthy. It's not in a good position. I mean, not even looking at the environment and the things that we're doing to the world itself, but what we're doing to each other and what we're essentially doing to ourselves. And people are not aware of it. People go their entire lives not changing, not growing, doing the same things, and basically going their whole lives being unhappy, destroying who they are for the sake of some weird ideal, whether or not that's religious, personal, the needs of others, the needs of society. The world is not healthy. And you know the world's not healthy because if the world was healthy, you would be healthy. You would start out being healthy. Everything would be fine. But that's not the point of a spiritual awakening. Often when you're spiritually awakened, your life is not healthy. Your life is far from it. You have traumatic experiences as a child, maybe, as a young adult, things that happen to you. For me, there's many, many, many things. I could list them off in morbid fashion and make everybody depressed. I'm not going to do that, but my life was not fun. It was not good, right? I was the only one that was making it fun by laughing and smiling at everything that was happening to the best of my ability. Not taking things seriously was the only way I could really handle it growing up because my life just wasn't good. So, and that's kind of what the point, you go through all of this darkness because you have a light inside of you. Often the people that go through a spiritual awakening are the ones that are pure of soul, are the ones that really are bright and beautiful. And we've just convinced ourselves that we aren't, because as a kid, we might have been so prosecuted for whatever reason that, it dims who we are. As a kid, I had gifts, whether or not, psychic gifts, you want to call them that, or, I had a lot of empathy as an empath. I had a lot of insights. I was kind of quiet. I was more reserved, and I was just more mature for my age. And nobody really liked that. Everybody wanted me to do this and be like this. And people were like, what's wrong with that kid? And they would, and it was just like a weird sort of experience as a kid. And it was very lonely and, a profound loneliness as a child. My parents were borderline narcissistic in the way that they dealt with me, the way that they raised me, the things that I've seen, and so none of that was good for me, but it was necessary for an awakening. And so what you're going to find is that the whole purpose of going through things like that is so that you can awaken to your own truth, to your own light. Because if you have any compassion at all, and you will I'm sure that you are if you're watching any of these videos and that you're being awakened, is you have some sense of compassion, some real empathy, humanity to you, right? And that's not just for you, it's for others. And we've learned that we're not allowed to share that side of ourselves with others. As men, if you're a man watching this, but a lot of men who show love are made fun of or ridiculed, and they're called gay, right? I don't know if you've ever noticed that, but it's kind of like a toxic masculinity. And people aren't encouraged to show love. People aren't encouraged to do things for other people. It's a lot of judgment in the world, a lot of negative attitudes that people have towards things, each other, all perpetrated by some underlying truth that we all have just forced ourselves to believe just because it's part of society. We're not challenging that aspect. And so really what, a huge purpose of you being here, your mission is to break down that old foundation, is to be a leader, to take on the world from your truth, with your truth, from your perspective, and molding your own way and helping others, helping to heal others, because you just being you heals other people. If you're loving yourself, you're healing other people, just people that are being with you. I don't know if a stranger's ever smiled at you. That's a nice feeling, just to have somebody smile at you for no reason, just because they love themselves and they're fine, because they don't look at you and see anything negative, right? Because they just love themselves, so they have no reason to think anything bad about you, unless you give them a reason to. But even then, they might just brush it off because, it's actually easier to let go of things than it is to hate. And so being awakened is really, it's about this ultimate goal. Why you would have forgotten everything coming here just in order to go through all of this again was, for the experience, of course, because without the experience of all of the pain, then none of it would be worth it. None of it would be important. How would you ever feel that you were doing anything important with this life and this spiritual journey if you never went through a whole bunch of pain, if you didn't go through anything profound at all? It wouldn't mean anything to you. You wouldn't be able to do anything with that to anyone, because there's no greater feeling than being on the brink of death either metaphorically or literally, and to come back from that. Like, that's a hero's journey. That's something profound and important, and that's something that you chose to experience because it is the ultimate confidence that you can teach yourself. It's not impotence, it's not fake, it's real. It comes from your soul. It's deep and profound, and you go through that experience, that darkness, so that you can find your light and show it to others and show it to the world in a way that you like doing. And that's really, another huge aspect of it is coming here to do what you came here to do, whether or not it's multiple things: helping people, spiritual, music, creative. You came here to do something that was inevitably the most important thing that you could do for others, for humanity. Like, you're here to help humanity grow because the world is changing, going into a direction that's going to be different. And going through this journey is giving you the knowledge and the wisdom and the power to change the course of time, to change the direction, and to heal the world, to make it healthy again, and the way that you know how to do, and the way that you know how to do it, and the way that you know how to be. So, it's super profound. It's not easy. It's definitely the hardest thing that you've ever experienced. People often don't want to experience it. There's definitely been times where I resisted it, resisted the calling, but you can never go back. And once you let go and go with it, you realize that it's so much better being, who you are, being what you're meant to be, even if you're not 100% there yet, but just being able to go with the flow, just saying, you know what, I'll go to where I'm supposed to go, and I think everything will be fine when I get there. Having that attitude, doing that, is a lot better than being stuck in the same situations with the same people, listening to the same things that they're telling you about life, because ultimately it's your happiness that matters the most. And anybody that is not concerned with your happiness, what actually makes you happy, what fills you with joy, is not deserving to be in your life, at least at the moment, or their opinion shouldn't matter as much as your own, because you're here for a greater reason than you think that you are. And no matter what's happening in your life, and what you think has happened with others, with relationships, anything that's ever happened, you're able to move forward. There is something to fall back on. You have your own grace. Something exists inside of you, and you should follow that. Follow your own truth, and it will lead you to the heaven that people describe in books. Okay, so I hope that was able to help some of you. Again, it's not easy, but I do wish all of you the best of luck, and I will look forward to speaking to you guys next time. All right, thank you guys. Have a good day.